Hey everyone, and welcome to another video. I'm Simply G, and today I'm going to be showing off all of the anime that I got for this month of August. Man, there's way more than I expected. So rather than spend too much time on this intro, I'm just going to get straight into it, and I hope you guys enjoy. Okay, so first up we have some merchandise. This is actually kind of an odd story. So last time when I got my Japanese proxy box, this came with it because I had bought this product prior, and then the company that put it out, which was Kyoto Animation, said that there had been a problem, it wasn't up to their standards, and so that they were sending a replacement to anyone who had bought the item before. So they had sent this replacement to my proxy, and my proxy was just going to add it on into the next shipment that I had. Anyway, so the item that I got was the rubber strap for Rin's birthday for the Link Up Smile line. And so, yes, I already had this. This is the original that I had. Can you see what this huge glaring issue was that needed them to remake all of these items? Can you tell? If you can't, I don't blame you. It is incredibly Japanese standards, I swear to God. It's incredibly difficult, but compare the pair. We have the bottom of the sweater is blue, not maroon, which is like the larger issue. The other issue is he's missing a button on his shirt or on the cuff of his jacket. So those are the huge, terrible problems. To be honest, I didn't even notice this until very recently. The sweater one, I thought it was just the button, and I was like, oh my goodness. Anyway, yeah, so I have two now, I guess. One that is wrong, one that is not. But yeah, I mean, I'm not complaining about it, but I do find it a little bit funny that I don't know, and I wasn't expecting this, and by now I've started the next birthday merchandise line for free. So this was just an odd little extra with that. Speaking of free birthday merch lines, this previous month, June is when it starts. June is when it starts because the main character's birthday is in June, the very end of June. So I finally got the merchandise for this year's birthday event, which is the birthday decoration series. So this is the clear file that I got for this year. I'm only getting the clear files because I don't really like much of the merchandise. There's also no rubber straps. I think there's acrylic stands, and there's like jewelry and can badges, which is pretty typical. So we have Haru with his birthday cake, and you can see that his birthday, the 30th of June. And then the back is the chibi version, which is pretty typical of these series of art and merchandise. I mean, like I've always said, I'm a big Free fangirl. I don't tend to buy a lot of merchandise from like every series that I watch or that I love, but Free, somehow Kyoto Animation keeps just making stuff that I want. They've got me in their grasp, and so yeah. But yeah, happy to have this. Nagisa's is already out, as is I think the two senpai characters, Nao and Natsuya. I think they've already been released, and I'm pretty sure they're at my proxy in Japan, but I haven't shipped that out yet to me because it's kind of not high priority right now. I've had other things to worry about. So yeah. Other things that I got from my Japanese proxy is a Japanese anime release, Blu-ray release. I bought from Yahoo Yahoo Japan, Yahoo auctions. And I mainly wanted it for display purposes, which is why I typically buy Japanese releases, especially if they're not subtitled. So this is the first limited edition box. So the box that came with volume 1 of Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. As you can see, it's quite fat. This would hold, I think there's, I can't remember if there's 3 or 4 of these boxes I think it's 3 in the whole series, which contains the 15 or so singles of the Blu-ray. But you can see this one has some sun damage, which is fine because I'm just using it for display because it has this lovely Arakawa artwork on it. And then inside, this is the volume of the first thing, and you can see the space for the extra volumes. Yeah, I mean, this is a pretty typical Japanese release. Digipack stuff. There's a booklet, and oh my god. Yeah, these little cards of the what are they called? Advertisement bumpers, and the disc. So yeah, I mean, nothing brilliant, and I mainly got it because these boxes for the singles are pretty cheap if you buy secondhand, and even new in some places. And I love Arakawa. I love her artwork, and I wanted to pick it up. So yeah, who knows if I will continue to get any more of these types of boxes for the show in particular, especially. But happy to have this one, and I need to find a place somewhere to put it so it looks nice. So starting with the anime, I have a couple DVD releases that I picked up this month. As longtime viewers know, I don't really ever buy anime DVDs unless it's the only way to purchase something, which is the case for both of these. They're very old discs and very out of print discs. So really excited to finally have these. The first one is one that I've been looking for a long time. Finally was able to find it via eBay, the US eBay. So I purchased it via my proxy, I purchased it and had it sent to my forwarding address in the US. And that is Central Park Media's release of They Were 11. This is a 90-ish minute film adaptation of Moto Hagio's manga of the same name. If you're not familiar with They Were 11, it is a sci-fi manga story about a group of young people who are trying to pass the test basically for intergalactic university. They all come from different planets and different cultures, and they all want to go to university for their own different personal reasons. Our main character is this one here. Frol is kind of the secondary main character. But the idea is that 10 of them go into a shuttle or a ship and are meant to survive with these other strangers for a month. And if they're able to do that without any issues, without ending the test prematurely, then they will qualify to go to this university. But once they get onto this ship, they discover that a couple of the systems have been compromised, and there is a mystery 11th member in their group. They don't know who is the one not supposed to be there, so it's kind of a whodunit, and trying to figure out what's going on and getting all of these different people with different personal backgrounds to cooperate. So if that sounds familiar because you've read or watched the recent series Astra Lost in Space, that one was huge. I would presume hugely inspired by this. They Were 11 is a very classic manga. It's still very well known in Japan, and outside of Japan. But this is the anime film that CPM put out. It has a dub. It has Japanese subtitles as well, obviously. Interesting little film. I think it was a pretty solid adaptation. yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if one day Discotek relicensed this for a Blu-ray release, and if they did, I would be very excited, very happy, really eager to support that, because I like this series a lot. I'm a huge Moto Hagio fan, as most people know, and this cover really makes me laugh, because the engaging in quotation marks looks like it, because obviously it's meant to be like an encouraging quote for people to buy it and watch it, but engaging with a lowercase e, and just that one word in quotation makes it look really sarcastic and not very, like, that wouldn't compel me to pick this up and watch it. So I had to laugh when I saw that, because I didn't realize that was on the cover, or I just didn't remember. But yeah, if you can find a copy of this film cheaply, I would say, hey, it's worth a watch. I would also recommend the manga, but again, really hard to find. One of those titles that is, well, it was included in Four Shoujo Stories, the anthology that Viz put out somewhat illegally, and so only ever got one print run and was cancelled. But you can also buy it via the magazine floppy singles, which are pretty well priced. Most of them, at least. There's only 4 issues, so that's another way to collect the series if you do not have it. But I would like a relicense for both. I think there could be renewed interest in them, especially now that we have more of Hagio's work in English. But yeah, they were 11. Pretty solid little film. The other release that I got is a Media Blasters or Anime Works release. This is one that's a little bit of an oddity. It's one that I've been meaning to pick up forever again. And this one you can find really cheaply comparatively to They Were 11. I think this disc came out in like 98, really early on in the DVD transition, as did They Were 11. I think this came out in like 96 or 97. So, yeah. But this is the 2-pack or double feature Yu Yu Hakusho the movie with Ninku the movie. They say movie, but both of these are 30-minute specials, OVAs. I mean, they technically are movies. They're listed as movies, but they're only 30 minutes long. So the whole disc itself, because it is a single disc, is only an hour. I bought it mainly because obviously I wanted the Yu Yu Hakusho film movie. This is the only piece of Yu Yu Hakusho that isn't licensed by Funimation. It has a different dub than the Funimation one, which isn't bad. I think it's fine. But if you're familiar with the Funimation dub, then it's weird. You're not going to be used to it. But I had wanted to pick it up because I'm not sure that Funimation will ever try and get the license for this. It would be pretty cool if they did. Not that I think they could redub it at this point either, because of internal issues with some of the voice actors of the cast. But anyway, regardless of that, I wanted to own it in some form. This DVD is not great. It's definitely an early DVD, but for a 60-minute 2-feature disc, it's not the worst thing I've ever seen. Yu Yu Hakusho the movie is basically an episode where Yusuke and the gang have to save Koenma, who has been kidnapped and ransomed for this like illustrious golden seal by another demon kid. And yeah, that's basically it. They have to go rescue Koenma. Nothing too complicated. And you find out why Koenma was initially kidnapped. And it's just a fun, like, there's fights, there's the Yu Yu Hakusho boys, and it's funny and fun and, you know, whatever. Classic Yu Yu Hakusho. It's just an extra episode of what you enjoy of the original series. Comparatively, Ninku the movie, Ninku I didn't know anything about whatsoever. But having watched it, I actually liked it. I was surprised how much I liked it. This is similarly just another episode of the show. Ninku was a Shonen Jump manga, like Yu Yu Hakusho. It ran in the early to mid 90s, and then it had a follow-up sequel in the mid 2000s up to I think 2011-ish or something. It had a follow-up quite a few years later. But it's the story of a martial arts group of young people, or a group of young people from this martial arts group or town or village or whatever, called Ninku. They call themselves Ninku, but it's an adventure kind of. They travel around the world and have fun, wacky hijinks and fight bad guys and whatever every episode. And oh my goodness. Okay, so this particular episode, our heroes, this group of young people, I think there's four characters. There's kind of the quote unquote normal guy. There's this kid who's the most obviously youngest looking one and has a very different character design than everyone else. And then there's a brother-sister pair. And they also have a penguin, sidekick, friend, whatever. But they've run out of money and food and fuel for their plane that they fly around, and so they need to find work at the closest town to, you know, earn some money, get some food, earn some money for petrol. And so they're like, we can be bodyguards to this town, but then they discover that people have already stolen their identities and are pretending to be them and are serving as bodyguards to this town, which has had a real issue with bad guys, basically bandits or something. And then they try to figure out why these people have stolen their identities, and then there's a big fight against the bandits, and the episode's over. It was fun. I enjoyed it way more than I expected. The characters were pretty likable. I'm surprised that, because Ninku, the show, it had an anime adaptation as well, obviously. Similar time frame to Yu Yu Hakusho. So I'm surprised it never was licensed. It's 50 episodes. And watching this and then reading about it after the fact, it does not surprise me that the creator of Naruto was very heavily influenced by this series. He used to draw a lot of the characters from this series in inspiration for his own works, because oh my goodness, especially in the bad guy group at the end, there are character designs that would absolutely fit with Naruto. Which makes me wonder, like, why this was never licensed, because obviously Naruto is a hugely popular series, and this isn't exactly the same as Naruto or anything, but it has a lot of the feeling of, I've never watched Naruto, but I have read the manga. And it does remind me a lot of the early stuff of Naruto. It was fun. It was a good time. And again, like, I feel like this series could have had a chance if it had been licensed at the right time for the US. But so this is a weird release by Anime Works. Obviously, it's not every day we get a double feature from two completely unrelated franchises on one disc. But I think there's two possible reasons as to why they put this disc out, especially in this format. One, I don't remember, and I don't know when Yu Yu Hakusho like really hit it big in the US. Obviously I wasn't living there, and so I don't have any background on like exactly the timing of when, you know, Yu Yu Hakusho was on television and when, in comparison to when this disc came out. But either Yu Yu Hakusho was popular, kids were enjoying it. In an attempt to cash in on that interest, Anime Works licensed the movie, and as part of their licensing deal, they were bundled. Ninku was bundled with it, and just cheaply. And because they knew that they wouldn't be able to sell Ninku separately with a lot of people interested, they just chucked them together, put the disc out, and hoped that that would sell units for them. Or, and I think this is probably more possible if we consider the timing, these two specials, movies, whatever, quote unquote, were licensed together. And again, it might have been because Anime Works was vying for Yu Yu Hakusho more than Ninku, but they were licensed and released as a sort of testing ground to see if there was pre-existing interest in either of these franchises in the US. Because, as I said, both of these have dubs, and with good dubs as well. Like, there's Wendy Lee in here, there's Mona Marshall in these dubs. It's like highly well-known voice actors and actresses of the day, and subsequently, Yu Yu Hakusho took off. Ninku never did, but it was done as a way to test the water, so to speak, for whether or not people would be interested in either of these the longer series, the longer anime television series. I don't know. That's just speculation on my part, but I think either of those options are both valid and very possible, and I'm kind of leaning towards the latter because I do think that this disc came out in the late 90s, and I don't know when Yu Yu Hakusho came out on television, but I think it was just like early 2000s, maybe just the turn of the century, but who knows? I don't know. Let me know if you do. But if you can find this disc, especially if you're wanting the Yu Yu Hakusho film in particular, I'd say pick it up. You can get this DVD for very, very cheap. And yeah, Ninku isn't actually like a bad addition or anything. It's quite a bit of fun and worth a watch. Next, for anime, I'm going to show off my Blu-rays. I got quite a few limited editions. And I have UK, US, and Australian releases in this video, so that's a little bit exciting. But first and foremost is the release that I was most looking forward to. I pre-ordered this day one. I was a little bit late for the super wonderful pre-order, but I was still able to get the pre-order tier that I wanted, and that is the UK Anime Limited release of Revolutionary Girl Utena. This is their box set, their limited edition set. So, in pretty classic Anime Limited style, or all the anime style, they have their standard limited edition releases, and they had a store exclusive box for those releases. So, it's done in a similar style, but not exactly to the US, and I actually prefer this one a lot more. As you can see, it's Region B and contains the entire series plus the film. And you can buy all of these individually on their own, even now. I'm pretty sure they're still in print. But the box you would have had to get from their store, and I think they only had made like 500 or 1,000 copies of the box. I can't remember. So this is part one. Hard case, both sides. Comes with a bunch of postcards with pretty typical artwork for the show, a poster as well, and then the case with the discs. 3 discs to the first set, and then 4 for the last one because it also includes the movie as well. And all 3 sets are done in this style. So set 1, set 2, and of course this is dubbed and with subtitles and everything else, and set 3. So yeah, I love Revolutionary Girl Utena. It's an Ikuhara show. I'm a big fan of his works, and of course this is probably his most well-known classic, beloved title. Everyone knows Utena, and if you haven't watched it, I would highly recommend you do so. I think the discs for these are pretty much one for one with the US releases, so picture and audio quality wise they're pretty close, if not identical, to what the US got. Yeah, I really love this show. I previously owned the US release, but actually never got around to watching it on Blu-ray. And by the time this was announced, and I was kind of juggling whether or not I wanted to keep the US release versus this one, or get this one. And when it was finally announced and shown off, I decided on the UK release, mainly because I really appreciated that this is a smaller, and it's not like the smallest limited edition release ever, of course, but the US one takes up so much room. It has space for the rings, the rose wing rings. It had a huge thick book, which is wonderful, but not something I was particularly invested in, or that I'm not upset about not having, if that makes sense. I've said it before, but my favorite types of limited edition releases are more focused on packaging and possibly on disc extras versus having all of the extra guff that takes up extra room. This is, even with this being as thick as it is, this is still thinner than what the US release, I'm pretty sure the US release is like here. So it does kind of make all of the difference. And yeah, really, really happy to finally own this series once again. I've owned the series recently, since I've been collecting, probably 3 times, first with the US DVD releases, then of course with the US Blu-ray release, and now with the UK release. As one of my favorite shows, I don't mind repurchasing it again and again. I do it more often than I should, probably. And finally happy to have a Region B, really lovely limited edition release for this series. And for the UK, it was the first time that Utena had ever been released in its entirety, I'm pretty sure. So that was really cool for them. Finally, for anime limited releases, this is another one I bought secondhand from CEX. I was really lucky that I was able to get this one because it's out of print and harder to find now. But this is Sound Euphonium, the first season. As you can see, it has the older style of anime limited release with this slip cover and then clean box art underneath. They don't really typically do the slip covers anymore. Just as a general rule. And this one is, because I got it secondhand, it's a little bit more banged up than the previous, but we have again the art book, character art, and all this other stuff, which is pretty cool. And then of course the digiback pack. These are 2 disc release. You can see this tray is a little bit smashed, but it's fine. It still holds the discs, and I'm not complaining. Disc art underneath, or artwork underneath, is stuff that if you are familiar with the show and the packaging releases of the show, there should be pretty recognizable. But yeah, so if this is one of the few Kyoto Animation shows I still needed to get. I'm again hoping that we see season 2 from Anime Limited, because oh my goodness, the Pony Canyon releases are such a hodgepodge, very out of print, and really like weird packaging consistency. I don't mind buying the films and stuff from the US because they're at least just in Blu-ray cases, but the first season of this was the original Pony Canyon, like huge jewel case DVD cases that were like double size. And then the second release was just a normal DVD case size, but still like Blu-ray. So people were like, what's going on? yeah, so I'm hoping that we see a season 2 release from Anime Limited, because I like this style of limited edition release, obviously. And I would prefer consistency. If I really had to, I'd buy the US releases of the second season, but I'd much prefer to just have a Blu-ray sized package that this company has put out. But yeah, the like Liz and the Bluebird and the other films, like sequel spin-off films, I have no problem buying the US one if we never see a Region B UK or Australian release, but the actual second season I'd much prefer. Yeah, as I said, this is one of the few Kyoto Animation shows I still needed to get, because I've been actively trying to buy all of their series in an effort to own their entire catalog, because I'm a huge fan of them. I don't adore every single series they put out, and honestly, Sound Euphonium isn't one of my absolute favorites from them, but considering the tragedy and the loss of talent from what happened last year through the arson attack, it made me recognize and realize like how much I did appreciate Kyoto Animation and the people there and everything they put out, even if it wasn't my favorite stuff. So yes, I've been now trying to get everything that I could from KyoAni. I'm still needing K-On!, which is I've seen and I've owned previously and then sold, and then so now I'm trying to buy it again. And a couple other things. Chunibyo is another one that I need to pick up. But this was one of their more recent titles that I just hadn't gotten yet, and I'm happy that I now have it. Also, if you don't know anything about this, this is about a high school girl who plays the euphonium, which, as you can see, is this brass instrument right here. She joins the concert band orchestra at her high school, which isn't a very good school insofar as competition for their musicians, and her friends and the teacher and them trying to compete in the national level. So yeah, it's good. It's very a lot of people liked it a lot. I enjoyed it. It's not, as I said, not my favorite of the KyoAni stuff, but it's still very lovely. Fantastic if you're a musician. I think, as always, Kyoto Animation just lovingly creates and lingers on anything that it can within their series, and the instruments are just so front and center and cared for and beautiful in this series. The music is lovely, and the girls are all very likable. Well, the characters are all very likable. It is a co-ed school. There are more than just cute girls, but majority of the cast is cute girls. But yeah, Sound Euphonium, pretty decent, pretty great. I need to actually rewatch the first season. It's been a while. I watched it when it originally came out and just haven't seen it since. So probably time for a rewatch at some point. Another Anime Limited release that I got this month. This one I purchased secondhand via CEX, via my UK proxy, and that is the first volume, quote unquote, first half part release of March Comes In Like a Lion. This is the anime adaptation of Chika Umino's ongoing slice of life drama manga about a shogi player. So this is a more typical Anime Limited release with the digipack, 3-disc release, and they have only released the first season in the UK. I'm hoping that we do see the second season at some point, because I don't want to pay Aniplex prices, and I honestly prefer Anime Limited's packaging more. And we have the booklet here, which is again pretty typical of these sorts of releases from this company, really lovely, really happy to have it. If you haven't watched this show, I highly recommend it. I'm a big fan of Uno's stuff. I also recommend Honey and Clover, which is now available also on Blu-ray in the US. So check both of her series out. But this one in particular is on Netflix. It's on Crunchyroll, I'm pretty sure. It's available a lot of places, so watch it. Watch it. You owe yourself the opportunity to watch it because it's really, really good. Next is another UK release, and this is from Animatsu, which is kind of I think they're related to MBM, or I can't remember. But this is their limited edition release of My Love Story, Blu-ray, slipcover, lovely, front, back, and keep case with, I think it has some like Valentine's Day cards and a poster of that, and 3 discs. This is a very sweet, lovely shoujo high school romance story about a guy who doesn't quite fit the shoujo manga expectation of a love interest, and his very adorable relationship with his sweet, cute, verily perfect girlfriend who just absolutely adores him, and his friendship with his best friend, childhood friend, Suna, if you haven't read this series, it's a manga, or haven't watched the show, it follows our main character who has in the past always fallen in love with cute girls, but they who've been nice to him throughout his childhood, but pretty quickly it becomes obvious that all of these girls that he's had feelings for have only ever been nice to him to get close to his best friend, who's more typically a shoujo manga lead. He's handsome and smart and very well spoken and kind, etc. But Suna has, and as soon as they get close to Suna, as soon as they like have taken advantage of Takeo, our main character, they start bad mouthing him, and just exposing how mean and terrible they are. And as a result, Suna doesn't, he's really burnt out on love. He doesn't trust a lot of people because he's seen how his best friend has been treated, because obviously he cares about Takeo, and the fact that all of these girls say that they like him, but then they don't respect his friends is really Suna best character. Okay. I'm sorry. Suna best character. He's the best. I love him. And also I really, spoilers for the series, but he doesn't ever get into a relationship throughout the story, which I really appreciate. But I also really appreciate that our main couple, despite being a very odd couple in terms of looks, are very much smitten. They care about each other, and there's no real drama or worry that they might be persuaded by a rival romantic lead or whatever. It's just 2 really lovely people who care about each other, and you're invested in their happiness, and they're happily ever after, right? And of course it draws comedy out of the fact that people so often misinterpret Takeo as being like this big brute of a guy, kind of scary. They don't really understand him, but then as soon as they meet him, they realize that he's a really lovely guy, just big sweetheart, just wants to help everyone, and he wants things to go well for the people he cares about. It's very likable. The other manga that the creator has done is High School Debut, so if you're familiar with that one, and you haven't read My Love Story, then give that one a shot. It's a lot of people recommend the manga because it's a quote-unquote shoujo manga that guys can enjoy, mainly I think because it's from the male perspective. But I have to say, that's such a... I hate saying that because, one, it's the most cliche tropiest, like, girly high school romance shoujo ever. And so if you compare it to anything with a female lead, they're basically, like, they operate on the same level. And I dislike saying that the only reason it's good for guys, or that guys would like it, is because the main character is the guy. I don't like to do that, but it is a really sweet story. It is, if you're a fan of romance, if you're a fan of very likable characters being happy, and really good friendship, like really solid friendship, then check this one out. It's sweet, it's lovely, it's likable. I really like this. Again, limited edition comparatively to Sentai's release, which was like a huge big box with 1 million extra physical extras, and I just wasn't into it. But it's a little bit fancier than just the standard US release, and it's region B, so it's a little bit easier for me to borrow it out or watch it on any machine that I have here. But yeah, My Love Story, really good. It's available streaming a lot of places. I'm sure it's on High Dive. In Australia, it's on Anime Lab as well. So yeah, be sure to check it out. Next, we have some US releases. Well, I say US releases because they're Funimation releases, but I bought them locally because, for those who are not aware, Funimation actually now distributes in Australia in the same way that they distribute their titles in the UK. So this is the US release. It's just what was sold in Australia. They just basically, they had it wrapped up, plastic wrapped, and then they had the ratings logo sticker stuck on top of that, so it would be following our laws of rating. And so it's actually quite convenient because it doesn't mean I have to import US releases or Funimation releases at least anymore, which was what a lot of my purchases were. So this is a series that I watched streaming quite a while ago now. Really enjoyed. It's not like an absolute favorite of mine, but it was a good time. Looking forward to the second season. And that is Zombieland Saga. So if you're not familiar with this series, this is a series about, I guess, the idol industry. It's about a girl, high school girl, who has always dreamed of being an idol, this character here. But she's a bit of a klutz, bit clumsy, not what a lot of people would expect to be an idol. And she's about to submit her, I guess, audition thing to a company. There's also art cards, and magnets, which I haven't unwrapped, and I'm not going to do that. So that's that. There some extra. But on her way out of the house, as she's leaving for school, as she's leaving to post this thing, she gets hit by a truck and dies. Literally, she dies. Only to wake up resurrected 10 years later as a zombie, and is told by her wacky manager that she is going to become an idol. She's going to become part of this girls group. I can't remember the group's name, but there's 6 or 7 girls. Yeah, 7 girls, and all of them, she discovers, are zombies. They have been resuscitated from the dead because they have talents that are needed in this idol group. So we have our main character, we have this character who's kind of the Yankee, we have this character who, prior to her death, she was a very highly known, well-known idol in a pre-existing group, and she died because she was struck by lightning during a concert. There's this character who was a Showa era star. I think she was an actress, singer, again, who died young, and so now has a second chance at fame in her new undead life. We have this character who is very obviously was like a geisha sort of entertainer from even further back. And then we have our kind of cute Lolita style character here, who has a pretty interesting story and is not really, if you've spent time on the internet, then you know what it is. But if you haven't watched the show, you should, I don't want to spoil it for you. And then we have this character who we don't know anything about, aside from she's like the only zombie who hasn't like regained her humanity. She doesn't know how to speak. She doesn't know how to like act like a human. And so a lot of the comedy is driven from her failure of like fitting in to their general, like, we're not zombies, we're just cute girls, because nobody, like, their fans don't know that they're zombies. Only they know that they're zombies, and their manager, of course. It's a fun time. It's nothing like groundbreaking. It's one of those weird Mappa shows. It's an original series, so not based off of anything, or at least not that I've come across. I may be misremembering. I mainly watched this show because of Miyano Mamoru as the manager. He's wacky and wonderful, and I love him. He's my favorite. And this was when it was coming out, when it was airing. I didn't watch it whilst it was airing, but he was definitely probably the most memorable part of the show. Even now, people still make memes about him and about his performance and the character, and how he just basically is the character. And I'm like, yep, that's Mamo. And you discover the backstory, or it's kind of inferred the backstory of him, and like why he's building this idol group full of zombies, and why he chose these girls, most notably our main character. It's good. It's fun. It's funny. It's worth a watch, especially if you like kind of quirky, weird little things. I'm not a huge fan of like idol anime. I'm pretty cynical of the whole industry, but it's a fun time if you're not, being hypercritical of the realities and the abuses behind the idol music industry. You just want to watch some funny hijinks with zombies with some catchy tunes and a really energetic manager, then check out Zombieland Saga. In the same vein, we have another Funimation release, limited edition release, one that I bought locally because, again, it was basically what is the local release as well. And this one is another limited edition. This one I watched a lot more recently, like 3 weeks ago. And I enjoyed it enough that I ordered it from Amazon. So, this is a series that I saw a lot of hype for when it was airing. I saw a lot of hype for when it was released in the US. I don't know if this limited edition is sold out in the US, but it was like, people were enthusiastic about it, which is kind of surprising considering the genre of it and what it actually is. So what I'm talking about is ssss.gridman, the complete series, which does have a upcoming like spin-off same universe title called ssss Dynamax or something. I don't remember. Anyway, so this is it also was a limited edition. This one had like a extras box packed onto the back, which I actually prefer if you're going to include physical extras, so it doesn't actually affect the box. I know some people complain, but I don't. That included a bunch of art cards, double-sided art cards, and then also this thing, keychain, which is fine. Like, I'm never going to use it, but that's fine. So if you don't know what ssss.gridman is, I would call it in the same vein as something like Gatchaman Crowds, or even something like Samurai Flamenco, where it's, well, more like Gatchaman Crowds, because it's taking a pre-existing thing, which in this case is Gridman from the Ultraman universe, and reimagining it to a modern audience. It's kind of, I don't want to say like fan fiction, because it's not. It's definitely like an homage, a reimagining, a reinvention of the series for an audience that may not be familiar with the original. Oh yeah, the sticker also came with it. Those who haven't watched Ultraman, who aren't familiar with the history of the character and Gridman, and hopefully, I guess, piquing interest for those who aren't like super invested in it, whilst also being something that pre-existing fans of Ultraman and Gridman and Sentai, like tokusatsu shows, can enjoy. So yeah, it is closer to Gatchaman crowds in that sense, and being a modern reimagining of Gatchaman, and similar to Samurai Flamenco in that it's directly referencing and homaging something for a modern audience, that even if you're not into the original, you will still be able to appreciate. Anyway, so this is a story of a high school kid, this guy, who wakes up with no memories. He doesn't remember who he is, where he is, but he's in the house of one of his classmates, this girl here, who her family runs a secondhand store, cafe, antique shop kind of mix. And she knows who he is because he's her classmate, but they're not friends or anything. Anyway, he wakes up and discovers that this really old computer is talking to him. It's speaking his name, and the computer reveals itself. Well, it turns on, and inside the computer is Gridman, and he's calling this kid to fulfill his destiny in saving the world from kaiju attack. And he's like, what? And she's like, are you okay? And so they take him to the hospital, and when he goes outside, he sees that he can see these huge kaiju, these huge giant monsters just in the city. No one else can notice them. And the next day, one of the kaiju attacks. They don't know why, but he is possessed by the spirit, or he's called by Gridman to become Gridman. And so he turns into like this giant version of Gridman to fight the kaiju. And over time he meets other Gridman team members, friends, who become like weapons and things that he can like join with and transform. You know what I'm talking about. It's a very tokusatsu, Power Rangers type of, like even Transformers type of thing. And it is also revealed that these kaiju are being controlled by one of their classmates, and there's reasons she knows what's going on, and there's reasons why their world is filled with monsters that nobody can see, and that when the town gets destroyed the next day, it kind of all resets and nobody remembers, everything's fixed, and why. But then there's a darker underbelly of like the reality of this, and how these fights are affecting the town in ways that they don't even realize because they don't remember anything. It's good. Like it's a show that takes itself seriously, but if you're watching it, I think it's a more fun show to watch if you don't take it like 100% seriously. I think it's good. I think it has decent drama. I think it has decent characters, but it's not something like, personally, I will never take giant robot fights and like Super Sentai tokusatsu stuff seriously, and I don't think you're supposed to take it 100% seriously, and I think this show does have that self-awareness. Like it's just meant to be a fun time where you see the hero beat up some bad guys, and then the day's gonna be saved. And this does have, because it is a more modern reimagining, it does have a twist on that. It's not just the formula, which is, I think, appreciated. And I would expect because I'm not one. But I would expect this definitely appealed to the people who are into this sort of media. It's a really decent, I guess mecha is maybe the closest genre. I'm not quite sure. But it is one that a lot of people enjoyed. It's done by Trigger, so animation is pretty, like, action animation is great. I'm not, like, the biggest fangirl of Trigger Studios. I've liked some of their stuff. I thought a lot of their stuff is overhyped. But I did enjoy this more than I expected to, honestly. And I liked the characters. I liked the world. I think it's always fun when a pre-existing character, franchise, or idea can get this modern reimagining and be so successful. I personally liked this a lot more than Gatchaman Crowds, for example, because of some of the implications there. But I like Gatchaman Crowds for reasons that aren't really the story or the character, the main character. I liked the villain because it's Miyano and Mama were having way too much fun, and I liked the other quote-unquote villain. I can't remember their name. There's a lot I liked in that show, and it was very stylish as well. And this one, it has its ups and downs. It's not a perfect series, but I really enjoyed it, had a lot of fun with it. It's one that is just a good time. It's just a good time, and I'm looking forward to the sequel, spin-off, whatever you want to call it. And I expect more from this universe if it is successful as well, because I can appreciate these things that I personally wouldn't really ever get into otherwise. I'm not really willing to jump into the decades worth of masked hero media from Japan. I wasn't really ever a Power Rangers kid, so, you know, it's fun. It's a good time, and they put out a pretty nice looking release for the series, I think. Yeah, I'm sure most people have watched this because this was very, very popular when it was being released. Or at least from my perspective, I saw a lot of people like tweeting about it, talking about it. It got very high praise from reviewers who are watching it week to week. Yeah, I look forward to the new one coming out. I probably won't watch it until it's all finished and I can watch it all at once like I did with this. But yeah, ssss.gridman is pretty great. Next, for US Blu-ray releases, are standard releases, but very exciting releases because it means that I have finished this series, finally! This is volume 6 and 7 of Hunter x Hunter 2011, so it is finished. It is over. This is the end of the Chimera Ant arc, and the election arc, which is the last arc of the series of the show. One of my absolute favorite, if not my the favorite, Shonen Jump adaptations to anime. I'm a big Hunter x Hunter fangirl, and actually this show, I've said it before, but this was how I was introduced to Hunter x Hunter and kind of Togashi in general. I'd heard of Hunter x Hunter before via the 99 anime and obviously the manga existing, and I'd heard of Yu Yu Hakusho but had never seen it. I was aware of Level E, but didn't know that was a Togashi show and hadn't seen it at that point. So this series started it all back in 2011 when the first episode aired, and I watched it on Crunchyroll. And now I can finally say that I have the entirety of it on disc. We have Komugi and Meruem on these covers, who are very important characters for these final arcs. Not the last arc, but Chimera Ant arc. That's their story. So yeah, this is. I don't know what episodes these are. Episodes 100 to 123, and then episodes 124 to 148. I knew it was 148 episodes long. I just didn't remember the breakdown. Hunter x Hunter, if you're not familiar with it somehow, it's the story of Gon, who is a young boy who is in search for his father, who abandoned him at a young age to become a hunter. And that's like, wow, it's so amazing that he was willing to abandon me. I want to become a hunter too. So he leaves his hometown of Whale Island and his lovely aunt who raised him to become a hunter, during which he meets some of wonderful people, Kilua, Kurapika, and Leorio, who become his friends pretty quickly. He also meets various villains, including Hisoka, who is people have complicated relationship with, Ilumi, and the Phantom Troop, the spiders, and yeah, it's a fun action adventure, really adventure focused, I would say. Shonen manga, personally my favorite thing in Jump, especially now, even though it is on hiatus and is constantly made fun of for being on hiatus. But I'm gonna fight anyone who makes Togashi jokes because I hate them and they minimize his chronic pain and illness, and I do not like that. Do not minimize creators' struggles and say that they're bad for wanting a break, because the mangaka lifestyle is not healthy, and nobody should be campaigning for people to stick to it. I'm sorry. The creators should look after themselves more, and that shouldn't be controversial, but somehow it is for some people. Anyway, Hunter x Hunter, great series. Chimera Ant arc is very often quoted as the best shonen arc ever. I love it. It's very near and dear to my heart. I also really love the election arc. It kind of introduces my favorite character, or one of my favorite characters. She's amazing. She's a sweetheart. What a good kid. But in saying that, I love pretty much every character from Hunter x Hunter. They're all really likable, even if they're villains. They're all understandable as humans, if that makes sense. But yeah, definitely watch Hunter x Hunter if you haven't. It's on Crunchyroll. It's now on Netflix as well. I don't know if the entirety of it's on Netflix, but I know a solid chunk of it is. And it's on a lot of other streaming services, including Anime Lab here in Australia. That was a recent addition. But yeah, definitely worth your time. If you're a fan of shonen, and you don't mind dark themes, Hunter x Hunter is one of my highest recommendations ever. I love it, and it is what I would call one of the classic, especially the anime adaptation, one of the classic shonen anime adaptations, alongside things like Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood and Haikyuu, and there's a recent wave of stuff compared to some of the other stuff that's a little bit older, had a lot more filler, really weird pacing issues. Yeah, Hunter x Hunter's great if you want a great story, great characters, and just to fall in love with something and then despair that it is constantly on hiatus, but understand why and don't begrudge that, then check out Hunter x Hunter. It's worth your time and energy. Finally, we have reached the end of my anime purchases for this month, and these are some shonen releases. And this is a series that I bought the US standard releases with the expectation that I was settling for that, if that makes sense. And then a nicer release in the US was announced, which included an OVA that had only been released with the limited edition version in the US. So I was like, oh, I'll get that then. But then I discovered, and I don't know why I didn't know this, but then I discovered that the release that we got here in Australia, that we've always had, that we've had for years, has the OVA on it, and it's the only standard edition release that has the OVA on it. So I didn't even have to hunt down weird different versions of the US release just to have that OVA, because I like the OVA. Because I could have just bought it locally and not even worried about it. Why do companies have to do these things to me? Anyway, if you haven't guessed by now, I'm talking about Beyond the Boundary. This is another one of Kyoto Animation's series. So I have the TV show as well as the films, 2 films. One's a recap, the other is a sequel. This is another one of KyoAni's series that personally isn't like my favorite, but I did enjoy various aspects of it. I think there's a lot of really good ideas there. I just personally, some of the characters I was like, See, and I'm talking about episode 0. This episode, Daybreak, was not included in any version, or in the standard version, I should say, of the US release. You only got episodes 1 to 12. It was exclusive to the limited edition version until they announced their Steelbook re-release, which has that OVA. So I was like, oh, that's cool. I'll get that. But then, as I said, I discovered that it doesn't matter because this is 1, cheaper, and 2, just local and way easier to get. So I sold my US releases and picked these up, both of them secondhand, for a lot cheaper than I would have had to spend to get the US release. And as I said, these are the Beyond the Boundary I'll Be Here films, past and future. Past is the recap, future is obviously the sequel. Yeah. So, this, if you're not familiar with this series, it's based off of a light novel series that Kyoto Animation put out about a boy, teenage boy who is half Yoma, which is kind of like half demon, half monster, whatever. He's just living his life, but because he has this immortal monster DNA within him, he's kind of a threat to the world around him, and thus he is being monitored by his friends / I guess guardians, who are like supernatural protectors, basically. They're friends with him and they're close with him, but they basically just keep the peace between the supernatural world and the regular mundane world. And as I said, they kind of are observing him, hoping that he doesn't go berserk and they don't have to get rid of him, quote unquote. One day though, he meets, a young girl, another girl, attacks him with a knife made out of blood, her own blood, because she has been given the job to assassinate him because he is a threat, yada yada yada. And she's the last of her family who practice this like forbidden blood art. And it's about their first pretty antagonistic relationship, which soon turns to friendship, which soon turns to love. And yeah, just there's kind of a larger mystery of like who's causing these problems in the supernatural world, who's out to kill this guy who's just like trying to live his life. He doesn't want to destroy the world or anything. He's just trying to go to school and eat and do normal things. It's not like my favorite of KyoAni stuff, but I did enjoy a lot of aspects of it. It's, of course, a beautiful looking show. I actually appreciated it a lot more because I watched the show when it first came out, and then the OVA, I watched the show when it first came out, and the OVA shortly after that, and that I liked a lot because it's a prequel and I like the characters in it. But I remember being like, okay, that was good, but like not something I necessarily had to ever watch again. When I got the films and watched the films for the first time, the recap I thought did a really good job of like encapsulating the series. I mean, that's its job. It did it pretty well. It cut most of the stuff that I wasn't like interested in, or like it cut a lot of the chaff, and just stuck to what was necessary. And then I thought the sequel film was really good. It was a direct sequel, and it answered some of the questions left hanging in the original series and the first film, without losing its emotional impact and actually building off of the emotional ending of the original. it's good. As I said, not a personal favorite, but it's better than I remembered, and it's better than I think a lot of people kind of think of it. It might be a series that benefits from a watching all at once, like binging type of viewing, versus watching week to week, which is, I can't remember how I watched it. I think I watched part of it week to week and then the rest, like the ending, all at once. I can't remember. It's been a long time. But yeah, it was good. And it's something that I've come to realize as I've been watching some of these Kyoani shows for the first time, or rewatching them for the first time, is how much I remember and enjoy and appreciate these stories compared to other series that I've rewatched. And I'm like, oh yeah, okay. It's still just like fine. And whilst these shows are still maybe fine, there's still a lot more that I like about them than perhaps my memories were granting me. There's an interesting dilemma there, I think. So yeah, it's been nice to revisit some of these franchises and being pleasantly surprised at how much I still enjoy them, or how much I appreciate them more 5 years down the line, or however long it's been since I last watched this. Probably longer, probably like 8 years since. But yeah, Beyond the Boundary is pretty good. If you're a Kyoto Animation fan, check it out. If you like magical fights, and it's not really a yokai story, it's a supernatural story. Those sorts of elements, a mystery and a love story between a couple that teases and bickers a lot, then check it out. Also, if you like Ken, the actor, because he is the main character. So those were my pickups for anime this month. Way more than usual, which is good. I mean, not for my wallet, but it's good. I finished up some series. I finally got around to picking up some series that I've been meaning to get. I was able to get quite a few to finish or start or whatever, close up some of my Kyoto Animation stuff that I've been meaning to do. And finally hunt down some of these DVDs that are getting harder and harder to find. And I don't want to risk them never being relicensed and just never having them, because I want them. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on any of the titles that I talked about today. Whether some of these are your favorites, you love them, hate them, whatever else. I really love reading your comments. I try to reply to as many as possible. But yeah, so thank you guys so much for watching. I will catch you in the next video. Bye till then.